Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive.
Always. What are we exploring today?
Well, this time, it's all about something we all do, but don't always, think about too deeply.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
It's about choices. Yeah,
Choices.
choices. And more specifically, how they ripple outwards.
Yeah.
The impact they have, not just on us, but on everyone and everything around us.
Ah, I see where you're going with this. It's that butterfly effect idea, right? Like how one small action can set off a chain of events that leads to something much bigger.
Exactly. And we've got this really interesting blog post from Trend This to guide our deep dive. It's called The Power of Choice and Its Ripple Effect on Our Lives.
Catchy title?
It is, right? It's
Look,
from December 3rd, 2024, and it's full of those aha moments.
I'm always up for some aha moments.
Yeah.
So what's got you particularly hooked in this post?
Well, one thing that really stood out to me was the discussion on technology, or rather, our growing desire to disconnect from it.
Yeah, that's something I've been thinking about a lot lately too. It's like we're constantly bombarded with information and notifications. It can totally overwhelming.
Right, and the blog post actually cites some pretty startling statistics. Did you know that, like, 70% of millennials report feeling burnt out from this constant digital connection?
Wow, 70%. That's a huge number.
It is. It really makes you realize that this urge to disconnect, it's not just some trendy thing. It's like a genuine need for many people.
Absolutely. And it makes sense. Our brains just weren't designed to process this constant influx of stimulation.
So with so many people feeling this way, it makes you wonder about the ripple effect, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
what happens when that urge to disconnect clashes with everything else in our lives.
Oh, totally. The blog post actually uses a great example, someone deciding to unplug for a weekend getaway.
Sounds nice in theory, right?
It does. But have they considered the impact on their family, their work colleagues?
It's almost like going off the grid these days can cause more stress than it relieves. People worry if you're not reachable.
Exactly. And that's where the blog post emphasizes the importance of communication.
Communication.
Yeah, a simple heads up, setting expectations, it can make all the difference. It's about respecting your own need for space, but also acknowledging how it might impact others.
That's such a good point. It's like
Hmm.
you can have your peace and quiet without leaving everyone else in a state of panic.
Right, and it goes beyond just disconnecting from technology. It's about all sorts of choices, especially within families, like when someone makes a big life change, something unexpected.
Ah, yeah. The blog touches on this too, doesn't it?
It does, and it really gets into how families navigate uncertainty, that feeling of being thrown off balance.
It's like, one person decides to make a big move or maybe embrace a more solitary lifestyle,
Hmm.
and suddenly it's like everyone's scrambling to figure out what it all means.
Exactly. And those initial reactions, shock, confusion, maybe even a sense of loss, they're all totally natural.
So how do families, how do they work through all of that? How do they keep from completely falling apart when something like this happens?
Well, the blog has a surprisingly optimistic take on this. It suggests that these periods of uncertainty, while definitely challenging, can actually be opportunities for families to grow closer.
Really?
Yeah. The key, according to the blog, is open and honest communication. It's about creating a safe space for everyone to express how they're feeling, ask questions, and really, really listen to each other.
So it's less about avoiding those difficult conversations and more about leaning into them.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that change, even when it's hard. It's part of life. And it's through those challenges that families can find new ways to connect and redefine their relationships.
That's actually really reassuring to hear. Because let's face it, the world can feel pretty chaotic these days.
Mm.
And knowing that these challenges can actually bring families closer together, well, that's a bit of hope in all the uncertainty.
I agree. And the blog also stresses that it's okay to seek outside support during these times.
Oh, absolutely.
Family therapists, support groups, even online forums, they can all provide valuable insights and perspectives. It's like building a safety net.
You don't have to go through it alone.
Mm.
And having that support can make such a difference, not just for the person making the big life change, but for everyone around them.
Exactly. It all circles back to that idea of interconnectedness, doesn't it? Our choices, big and small, they ripple outwards and impact the lives of those around us, sometimes in ways we don't even realize.
It really makes you think, doesn't
That
it?
does. It makes you realize that we all have this incredible influence. And it begs the question, how can we become more mindful of this ripple effect as we make our own choices and navigate our own lives?
That's a really great question, and one that I think is worth exploring further. But for now, maybe we can shift gears a bit and see how this idea of the ripple effect plays out in a different context.
Sounds good to me. What did you have in mind?
Well, I was reading another article from Trend This, also from December 3rd, 2024. It's about the recent surge in value of XRP, a cryptocurrency.
XRP. Interesting. What's the connection to our conversation about choices and ripples?
Well, the article's title is XRP's Significant Surge Marking a Milestone in Capitalization. And it got me thinking about how even seemingly isolated events in the financial world can trigger these chain reactions that impact so many people.
Ah, I see. It's like we often think of financial markets as these abstract things, but they're ultimately driven by human decisions and actions.
Exactly. And as we've been discussing, those decisions and actions always create ripples.
So, are you thinking we delve into this XRP story and see how it illustrates the ripple effect in action?
I think that's a great idea. What do you say we unpack some of the key factors that contributed to this surge in value?
Okay. Sounds like a plan. Well, like the blog post said, even small choices can create ripples. And this XRP situation is like that on a much bigger scale. The article points to a few things driving the surge, especially some anticipated regulatory approval. Looks like the New York Department of Financial Services might soon be approving Ripple's RLUSD stablecoin.
Ah, okay. Stable coins. I remember seeing those headlines, but to be honest, I don't really get what they are.
Oh, sure. Think of it like this. Imagine cryptocurrency, but instead of the value going up and down all the time like Bitcoin, it's designed to stay stable, usually pegged to something like the US dollar. So like RLUSD would be backed by real US dollar reserves aiming for a one-to-one value.
Got it. That makes sense. But how does this stablecoin approval tie back to XRP surging?
It's all about, I guess, perception and potential. The article suggests that if this is approved, it could make Ripple a major player in New York's regulated digital finance market. And well, New York's a global financial hub, right? So that's a big deal. Suddenly, big institutions that might have been hesitant about crypto, well, they might be more likely to consider using XRP now, knowing there's this stable, regulated option alongside it.
So it's like one regulatory decision leads to more confidence, which leads to more people using XRP, and that drives the price up.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not just this one approval either. The article also mentions things like more adoption by financial institutions globally, growing demand from just regular people using it, and even technology advancements within the Ripple ecosystem itself.
Yeah.
All these things add up to create a perfect storm that's pushing XRP to new heights.
It's interesting how what seems like an isolated event can actually impact the whole financial system.
Hmm.
This isn't limited to just crypto, is it? We see this interconnectedness all the time with the regular markets, too.
You're absolutely right. Think about something like interest rate changes. One decision by a central bank can ripple out and affect things like, well, everything from mortgages to investments businesses make to global currency exchange rates.
It really all goes back to what we were talking about earlier, doesn't it? Whether it's a personal choice to disconnect or a regulatory decision that affects the world, our actions create these ripples that impact others, often in ways we can't predict.
It does. And it shows just how important it is to understand these connections. We often try to keep things separate, our personal life, our work, our finances, but the reality is they're all connected. What happens in one area will probably spill over into others.
It makes you think about your own choices and actions differently, doesn't it? Like,
Mhm.
wow, maybe I have more influence than I realize.
I think that's a good perspective to have. If we're more aware of that, it can help us to be more mindful, more thoughtful about the consequences of what we do, even if we don't intend for those consequences to happen.
So we've seen the ripple effect in families and in global finance. But is there a positive side to all this? Can we use this idea of interconnectedness to make positive change?
That's a great question, and I think the answer is yes. Understanding the ripple effect is essential for creating a more just and equitable world. But maybe we should pause here for a bit and come back to discuss how our choices can create positive ripples that help not just ourselves, but our communities and the world.
All right, we're back. So how about those positive ripples? It feels a bit, I don't know, overwhelming to think our actions have such a big reach, but it's kind of cool too if we can use that for good.
Yeah, I agree. There's a real sense of like, we can actually make a difference here, and it doesn't have to be these big dramatic things. It's about the everyday choices we make. Remember how the blog post talked about disconnecting from technology? Even that can impact those around us.
Right, yeah. It emphasized being upfront about needing a break so it doesn't like stress people out or cause
Yeah.
problems for others.
Exactly. That's a perfect example of a positive ripple. Just by being considerate, thinking about how our choices affect others, even in little things, it helps build stronger relationships and trust.
It's like you're spreading empathy. And it makes you think about families, especially going through those tough transitions the blog talked about.
Yeah, the way the blog framed those moments as chances to actually grow closer, that was really insightful. It's like instead of pushing back against change, leaning into those conversations, even when they're hard, can actually make family bonds stronger.
It's a totally different way of looking at things, right? Instead of just focusing on the negative, recognizing that these situations can bring people closer is, well, it's pretty hopeful.
It is, and it applies beyond just families, too. Think about communities facing challenges. What if we could approach those situations with the same openness, really listening to each other, working together to find solutions?
It reminds me of that Margaret Mead quote, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Our individual actions, when we join them together, they can create real change."
Exactly. Like the whole sustainability movement, one person deciding to, say, reduce their carbon footprint. It might not seem like much, but if millions of people make that choice, well, that has the power to shift entire industries, even government policies.
It all comes back to how interconnected everything is, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We're not just acting in isolation. Our choices create these ripples that interact with everyone else's, shaping the world around us.
And recognizing that, understanding that we all have that power, it's pretty inspiring, don't you think? It encourages us to make choices that align with what we believe in, choices that help create the kind of world we want to live in.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm feeling a sense of responsibility, definitely, but also a lot of hope, because it's clear that this ripple effect, it's happening all the time, whether we're paying attention or not. But if we can be more aware of our choices and how they might impact others, then we can use this force for good, creating positive changes that go way beyond ourselves.
I couldn't have said it better myself. It's a powerful reminder that each of us has a role to play in shaping the future, and that even small acts of kindness, compassion, and just, making thoughtful choices, they all contribute to creating a world that's more just, more equitable, and ultimately more sustainable for everyone.
This has been a really thought-provoking conversation. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the ripple effect of our choices. I hope it's given everyone listening something to think about. And until next time, keep making those waves because your choices, they really do matter.